Hello and welcome back to Leave Me Alone, the antisocial podcast. This week we're diving into something I watched on Netflix that honestly left me feeling a bit shaken and, if I'm being real, a little worried about my son's future. I came across this documentary and thought it would be an interesting, maybe even eye-opening watch, but wow, I didn't expect it to hit the way it did. It explores a corner of the internet that's growing fast, shaping how some young men think about relationships, identity and the world around them, and not always in a healthy way. As a parent, it's one of those moments where you sit back afterwards and think, how much of this is reaching our kids? And more importantly, how do we even begin to guide them through it? So today, I want to unpack what I watched, talk through some of the things that stood out, and have a real honest conversation about why it matters, especially for those of us raising boys right now. Now, I will say, my son is only 3, so we are a long way off from any of this actually affecting him directly, and I do hold on to the hope that by the time he's older, things will have shifted a bit. There's definitely more awareness now, more conversations happening, and people are starting to challenge this kind of thinking more openly. But I think that's also why it hit me the way that it did, because even though he's so little right now, you can't help but think ahead. You think about the kind of world he's going to grow up in, the messages he might come across, and the kind of man that he'll become. And I guess it just makes me realise how important it is, what we teach them early on. Things like kindness, respect, how to handle emotions, all that stuff really matters, because at the end of the day, that's what shapes how they see the world later on. I mean, I was already aware of some of this because of Andrew Tate. What a twat. But it's not just him. There are so many of these so-called alpha male influencers out there, and honestly, there's nothing alpha about them. They come across as deeply insecure, paranoid, and completely unequipped when it comes to real emotional maturity. It just feels like a lack of proper guidance somewhere along the way. And now they've got these platforms where they're pushing that mindset onto young boys. It's aggressive, it's toxic, and don't get me started on the way they talk about women. They sit there claiming they love women, but everything that comes out of their mouths is just blatant disrespect. They want women boxed into this almost medieval idea of loyalty and submission, like we're living in some kind of throwback era, while they're out here acting like they should have 10 wives and do whatever they want. The double standard is actually unreal. It's like, sorry, is this a relationship or are you auditioning for your own low-budget king fantasy? Because the maths isn't mathing. These men call themselves alpha males, but watching the documentary, it's obvious this is all performative. It's not authentic. Louis Theroux takes you right into the world and shows that it's not really about power at all. It's about insecurity. A lot of these men seem to come from backgrounds with absent fathers, emotionally unavailable and controlling mothers, and childhoods that left them desperate for validation. There's one moment that really stuck with me just before Louis walks into the room. A mum says to her son, "Don't embarrass me," and I immediately think, it's a bit late for that, love. It's funny, but it also says everything. That one line pretty much sums up the whole dynamic. The ideas these men promote are aggressive and driven by paranoia. They act like kindness is weakness, vulnerability is a flaw, and empathy is something to avoid. And the worrying part is that this doesn't just stay online. Young boys are watching this and taking it as advice, like this is how they're supposed to be. There's a moment in the documentary where an influencer tells Louis Theroux, "I coach boys on how to be fucking boys, not these Sue boys walking around these days." He says it like he's doing something positive, but really, he's just teaching suspicion, anger, and fear, and calling it masculinity. And the boys watching, they believe it. They think this is what being a man is supposed to look like. We have to think about the long-term impact of this. Imagine growing up without a father or a mother who emotionally checked out, and then finding this kind of content and seeing it as guidance. It starts to feel like a blueprint for how to navigate the world, even though it's a warped one. And the irony is hard to ignore. These are men who likely lacked proper guidance themselves, yet now they're positioning themselves as authority figures for impressionable young boys. In doing that, they end up repeating the very cycle that shaped them. It's the old saying, but on a much bigger scale: hurt people, hurt people. There's also a very performative side of this. These influencers put on a show of aggression, constantly ranting about weak men, pushing misogyny and leaning into conspiracy thinking. But at the same time, they rely completely on social media to stay relevant. They manufacture outrage because outrage gets views. In the documentary, one influencer even says something like, if you're not angry, you're already losing. But the irony is, they seem completely unable to handle anyone who disagrees with them. It's almost comical, except it isn't, because this is shaping real minds. As two women raising a son, this hits especially hard. You start to see the stakes. Boys, many of them, feeling isolated or unsure, are being shown a version of masculinity that's narrow, rigged, and emotionally limited. Kindness gets dismissed, curiosity is mocked, empathy is laughed at, and yet this is the version of manhood being pushed online in real time. And the boys are absolutely absorbing it, not just watching it, but taking it in, often without even realising, shaping how they see themselves and the world around them. And let's be honest, these men are full of contradictions. One of them even said they would disown their son if he was gay, yet they're active on platforms that celebrate LGBTQ+ voices. Others claim to respect women, but then turn around and mock, belittle, and degrade them. In the documentary, one of the influencers even tells Louis, women are fine as long as they know their place. It's outrageous and honestly pretty chilling, and yet there's a young audience listening and nodding along. At the end of the day, the label alpha doesn't really mean anything. Real strength isn't about being aggressive or dominating others. It's about resilience, emotional intelligence, and having the courage to act with integrity. Watching these men, it's clear they haven't had that kind of example themselves. And yet, they're teaching the next generation of boys that anger, paranoia, and hostility are something to aspire to. So, what can I actually do as a parent? I guess it's about leading by example, showing empathy, being curious, having a bit of humour, and building resilience in the way I live my life. Helping him to understand that the loudest voices online aren't always right, and that kindness, honesty, and self-respect are not weaknesses. And I need to be mindful about boundaries too, like limiting his time on social media so he's not constantly exposed to all that noise. And if I really think about it, real success isn't about followers or views or any of that. If he grows up kind, respectful, and knowing he's loved, that's what actually matters. Everything else is just noise. Now let's talk about the real wild stuff. Some of these influencers genuinely believe things like tap water is making kids transgender. Others claim ideas about DNA from a woman's past partner affecting a child. It's not science. It's not even close. But it's being presented to kids as facts. And that's worrying. In the documentary, you see how confidently these ideas are delivered. Watching it, you can't help but think these men don't need followers, they need help. They're angry and lost. But the internet rewards that behaviour. The louder and more extreme they are, the more attention they get. There's even a moment where young boys approach them, looking up to them, seeking approval. It's uncomfortable to watch. They're not being guided, they're being influenced. And the bigger issue is the system behind it, the algorithm. It doesn't care about well-being, it cares about engagement. And as a parent, that's the part we really need to understand. So all we can really do is focus on what we can control. Teach our son to think for themselves, to question what they see online, and not to take every loud voice at face value. And remind them that kindness and respect aren't optional, they're essential. Parenting in 2026 feels different. And yes, I'm aware my son is only 3, but it does make you think ahead. And hopefully that by the time he's older, things will have changed. Because the more awareness we raise now, the more people will talk about this, challenge it, and hopefully shift things in a better direction. But for now, for me, it's about laying those early foundations at home, but also holding on to the hope that the world he grows into will be a healthier, more balanced place. So to wrap up, what have we learned? The world of so-called alpha influencers is loud, chaotic, and full of contradictions. A lot of them came across as insecure, angry, and projecting their own issues. They make outrageous claims about tap water, lingering DNA, engineered masculinity, and platforms reward them for it. Louis Theroux's documentary is chilling, strange, funny, and uncomfortable all at the same time. It shows dysfunction, the contradictions, and the real impact these influencers are having, and it's a reminder of just how important parenting is. It's not easy, but if we approach it with humour, reflection, and intention, it can be really meaningful. Thank you for listening. This episode was a little more serious than my usual ones, and that's because this documentary really triggered something in me, especially my anxiety about the world my son is growing up in. As always, I appreciate you being here and listening along. It means a lot. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.